Okay. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. So it's kind of interesting because this Julian just talk about code reviewing a little bit, and the story behind it also start from code reviews. Anyway, so I'm Guga. I currently work for the company called Line Fukuoka in Japan, and it is a small team, and I'm rather a newbie in the team, but I am the most experienced Perl programmer in the team, and it's a small, like the team sort of maintain a small Perl project with I think less than 3,000 lines of Perl, but because everyone in the team is relatively new to Perl, like they all have less than 2 years of Perl programming experience, they tend to do a lot of code review, like a little bit too much code review. So this talk is a little bit, so Julian talked about how to develop developer. This is about coding your coder. Like how do you write a code to mutate your code, like in sensible ways. Anyway, so yeah, just briefly talk about my team. So there are there's a really sort of a strict convention. Like this team do a lot of code review. Like you push like 2 commits, and then the code review process could take 2 days. And then like some multiple reviewer has to agree on like this commits look okay to them, and then we sort of push the commit to a beta branch and for QA. So I estimate like there's like on weekly basis there are like at least 30% of the time you basically spend on reading someone else's code, doing code reviews. But this is good for this team because it actually what I found is that enables me, like I'm a newbie there. I have some rough idea about the business model, and then what is important for their business and what is not. But since I'm a foreigner, like I barely read, like I read like 10% Japanese spec, but so I have to use Google Translate all the time. But doing code review in that team actually requires me to like basically go through all the documentation for what's been implemented, and then see if that sort of matches the code. So that was quite challenging for me, but by doing so, actually enforced me to learn this. So I learned more about how they write spec, and then other people sort of learn about how to do Perl coding. So I think that's actually a good time like well spent. And then I think by doing this as a team, we actually ensure the readability of our entire code base. Because naturally, if like you are spending so many time reading, like the end result is probably readable by everyone. So like for some definition of readability, that's always fuzzy. And then, but I also think that this means that the maintainability of the entire code base is also increased, because like everyone really spend a good amount of time understand what the code is doing. So by readability, I sort of figured out a few things we actually care about in the team, like mostly just picking up like unconventional stuff. Like the team use mouse, they don't use moose because preference. Or also the founder of this team, they actually created mouse, so that's that kind of makes sense. But it's just a convention. It's not like it's good or bad thing. It's just a conventional preference. Or a lot of time people write like the team member in the code in a team, they write some Perl code that they didn't notice there are some quirks. So I tend to notice these points and then point to them. But I think a lot of time. So these 2 points, I think that the whole team spent a lot of time focused on this. So one of it is like mismatching style, meaning that like you sort of decorate your code in a way that's different from the team. So that's one thing. And then the other is what we call code waste. So this happens like you put some extra stuff in the commit that doesn't seem to have anything to do with the rest. So for styling, I think styling is really basically like fashion dresses. Like your code basically looks good from any angles. It doesn't really have anything to do with spec and then like if it's an architectural fit or if it's like the best solution in terms of algorithm or data structure. It just has to look good. And then like we already have a lot of tools like Perl tidy, Perl lint, or pretty much any modern editor can sort of automate this part. But for code waste, there's like in Perl programming, there's a few tools, and then by code waste I mean we have a lot of we could produce a lot of unused stuff like variable subroutine, like you define something, but you don't use them in like at least in the same branch in the commit. So like why do you define them in the first place? And so the following one will be talking about, well, can we write a tool for them instead of using precious human brains? So we already have something that so Perl Critic it has a lot of policies for catching this, and then App Critic is a tool developed in Booking.com that sort of focus on one policy at a time. So it can use we have like this 1,000 lines of Perl, 1,000 Perl files, but we only want to care about like clean up this one single violations. So, but it does that through all files. And then this other one, which is an interesting attempt, is RefUtil rewriter. So it changes your code from one way to the other. So similarly, from tools for the other languages like JavaScript, ESLint actually has something very similar. So besides like changing indentation and whitespace, it also does something similar to Perl Critic. But GoFix is even more interesting. It actually understands that you're calling, you write some Go language code using an old version of API, and it actually changes it. So there's other there's a small domain of code refactoring tool. Most of them are related to editors, like one way or the other. So, but the Perl tools, like the base tools for doing all these things in Perl is PPI, which is a parser, it parts Perl code into sort of a DOM tree structure. So if you're familiar with JavaScript HTML DOM, that's the same idea. So, and I go through all the documents or code in the PPI. Basically, I find all the elements I want. So if you want to, so the basic element, well, in PPI it's called PPI elements. So all the APIs bind to this class. If you want to delete something from your Perl code DOM tree, what you basically do is to first find what you intend to delete. So there's some filtering needed, and then you call remove method that would actually remove like the element from the tree, and then when you save the tree, it's also gone at the end. So it also implements insert methods, so new elements can be inserted to existence. So you need to find like some reference location, and then you can sort of add new code before it or after it. And so I believe the author of Adam Kennedy, when they do this, is basically modeling HTML DOM API because all the names are matching. So now that we have, so here's another example of adding. So when we want to add not just a token, but like a whole new line of statement, we can do this. So we sort of construct a new statement some way, and then we call insert before, and then we call another one, which is just for the white space. So some idea like that. So if you want to do this generically, I do this because I don't really have a solid idea how to construct like an internal statement. So I generate a new piece of code in string, and then I create a new DOM tree, but I pick all the element inside that tree and then sort of shuffle them all to the other ones. So this is this is a trick I do a lot. Yeah, so this is basically copy pasting with Perl. Oh yeah, I just talked about this. Removing one element for these others. Replace. Yeah, so for replacing is then you just you put new code in there and then you delete the old one. So that's just trivial. So these are all the basic elements I need to do what I want. So a few months ago, I started to sort of prepare for this interesting tool. So like writing code to refactor code is actually pretty difficult because there's a very limited amount of things you could do, and then Perl has this incredibly flexible syntax, which is not making the thing easier. But identifying waste and then remove that piece of code, well, that's actually pretty easy, or that's the easiest part to begin with. So I was thinking, if we can write program to re-indent our program, we can also do similar things. Basically, finding finding what's definitely unneeded and then remove them. So in the team we call it nitpicking, like picking up the small nits. So how do we remove unused variables? So these are sort of the code that I wrote in that nitpicking tools. I simply reuse the Perl Critic tool. So the Perl Critic policy, it already has a policy for catching up unused variables. So I simply create a wrapper object to get everything out, and then here's an element, and then I do this special check, and then I remove it. So this one is just because there could be multiple variable declaration in one line, and I don't know how to deal with that yet. So, so that's to give you some context, like here, if you declare full but never use in the following code, this could be removed. That the previous code can remove that statement for you. I'm still working on to catch the second case yet, but that should also be doable. So we can also go further, try to remove the unused include statement. So in this case, we use try tiny. We say we use try tiny, but there's no try on catch later on. So that entire statement can also be removed. But this is specific to try tiny. Then importing modules has all sort of different semantic. So but at least with this one, we could. There's a lot of code. Basically, we try to find all the include statements, and then we try to see if the document contains a try keyword followed by a block. So that's like a rough signature of how you use it. And then we say, does it look like the code also use any of these try-ish modules? If that's the case, then your code is good. Otherwise, if your code use it, but you don't have a try block around, then that use try tiny, that can be entirely removed. Okay. So one other thing we think of is to do this. So if you use mouse or mouse at the end of your package, you are recommended to do this. So this is called namespace polluting. So in mouse imports a lot of new keywords. They actually becomes the methods of your classes. And it might create some side effect at distance. So in the documentation, they actually recommend you to say no moves, and then it'll remove all the symbols that they introduce. So this is something that can be programmatically done. So if you use moves, then you could do something like this. So you say no moves, and then you find the proper position. So in this case, because we always have this one semicolon at the end, so I just try to locate that statement and then insert a no moves right before that. So that's actually doable. Or if you actually use namespace autoclick, this is similar idea. And I also managed to do this. So this is more like a taste. So you can say if you prefer to have shorter, cleaner code, maybe this is what you want, and then this is so. Let me take this as a full example. There's a tool called PPI dump that give you this sort of tree structure or tree-ish structure. So if we ignore the white spaces and see, so a statement that says A equals to A plus 3 semicolon always has exactly 6 siblings. So what we need to do is to first check if first do this check, and then figure out if there's a equal sign statement and in the second positions, and then if the fourth position is not is an operation that we can merge in with the equal sign, and then if they are actually operate on the same variable, and then we can do this mutation to sort of like merge two operators together, remove one element. So that's also doable. So, but in order to do all this, I also create a new set of Perl Critic policy. I call it too much code because this is all about detecting code waste. So, yeah. So, if you're using Perl Critic, you could also check this out alone by itself. Like some of these are sort of also the preference of my team. Like we think these are important, so we put it there. And I plan to also keep going further. So I noticed that because like sometimes like when newcomers when they start doing Perl, like copy pasting is like or cargo coding. Like they found some example on the internet and then try to do it. So what they tend to do a lot is a lot of these trivial things we experienced Perl programmer might see that, oh, you don't need to do this. Something like you want to get the number of element in an array and you put a scalar in front of it, but the scalar you don't need to do that. So that's a waste. Or the third one, actually, like the third one is like you have these circumfixes, that if you do this, like this one, so like the whole circumfix, you don't need that. That means the same thing. So, but people found some examples, and then this seems to do what they want, so they put in there, and actually it works. But so this is also an example of code waste. So you can replace that with a simple parentheses, or if you just coding full, then without the full bar in the front, then you don't need to have that 2-layer of code parentheses at all. Yeah, so those are easy to detect, and then I try to trace like the usage of hash, and then to see if there are unused keys. This is extremely difficult to do because you need to be able to see like are these hash passed along to these all different methods and then be mutated here and there. So it's probably not very doable. But there are also other examples that we can try to introduce as well. And yeah, so that whole thing we sort of spend like the past 3 months basically to get to a point that I actually think this is useful for the entire team, and it can be actually integrated as a Git pre-commit hook. So once you do your commit, and then this program actually modify your commit a little bit, and then actually just before you push. So so this actually, I think this eventually could save us the code reviewers a lot of time. They don't need to pay attention to all these small details anymore. Yeah, so I think altering code with PPI is generally easy. If you're doing like easy stuff, are actually easy to do. Like non-trivial stuff, well, which requires like some amount of time by humans anyway. But PPI itself is a little bit of a low level, like in the sense it's like it produces some. It doesn't really give you the semantic. It gives you a list of tokens, but it doesn't tell you which keyword looks like a function call, which keyword looks like a method call. You need to do some extra checks to verify that. So if you intend to do this, I recommend you to look into Perl Critic utils. It actually has implement a lot of these semantic checks, and but like identifying bad taste is difficult. But I actually think like I'm at a point I think this actually is going to be helpful, and it'll pay back nicely afterwards. All right, so there are a lot of things I sort of look into when I start writing this. Like the built-in behavior from PPI is transform, and then but I found another interesting module that's called develop mutator, which is different too. It's not for refactoring, but it's for something called mutation test. So it's definitely worthwhile to look into that. So it changes your code and then rerun your test, and then because your code's changed, then the test should fail. If it doesn't fail, that means there's probably a bug somewhere. So there's also editor tools which do more or less the same thing, but it's sort of integrated with editor. It's not a standalone tool. So yeah, that will be everything. Thank you for listening. I have 30 seconds for questions. But yes.
Is this something that you just did on your own, or does your team appreciate it?
Well, the team sort of they have a preview version of this, but it's not part of our workflow just yet. So I sort of talked to the team about this. They all knew about this, but like it's actually not really a mature product just yet. But I wish eventually I wish to make it like a webhook. So we are using GitHub Enterprise, and then I wish to make a webhook that basically do this stuff. Like in Golang, they have this review dog and review C, like this extra CI process they do. I wish to make this part of the CI. Yeah. So.
Have you considered integrating this with Code Tidy?
I haven't known this product, so I don't know this product yet. So maybe we can talk later.
Well, first I wanted to mention that as far as I remember, saying the scalar array explicitly is recommended by Perl best practices. So
No.
it might be just a repeatability.
Yeah.
Well, it's your choice, so what style do you actually, but just
Like I said, part of it is just conventional.
yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask is, did you try Critic IO service? Maybe it could be helpful.
Okay, I don't know that exists, but
It was promoted at previous YAPC.
okay.
It's pretty good at finding bad things.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you very much.